Welcome to TAC Makes, a podcast produced by the Art Center in Corvallis, Oregon. The following episode is one of 6 conversations between artists and collaborators involved with the exhibition Wildfire Water. Wildfire Water was made possible through a partnership with Playa in Summer Lake, Oregon, and is on view in the main gallery May 15th through July 5th, 2025.
Hi, my name is Autumn Muir, and I am the Uplands Coordinator for the Lake County Umbrella Watershed Council, which is a nonprofit helping private landowners in Lake County.
I'm Michael Boonstra. I'm a visual artist whose studio is based out of Eugene, Oregon. And I also am an instructor at Oregon State University.
Hello, I am Nancy Floyd, and I'm from Bend, Oregon, and I'm a visual artist. When we got to Playa, the whole idea of this fire and water collaborative exchange was that we would meet, the artists and the writers would meet with the local residents as well as some other experts in the field. And Autumn was one of those experts and is from Lake County and gave us a wonderful tour of the forest and told us a lot about, the history of the fires. And she was with a couple other people who really went into detail that for me was really informative because I had no idea how extensive the damage was in the Fremont-Wangima forest. That, the devastation that was up there and what was going to be needed for, it to be brought back to the way it was, and also for the community to be able to succeed in what their expectations were.
Yeah, likewise for me. As someone who had been to Playa numerous times before in other parts of Lake County, yeah, Autumn's input, especially in the tour that she offered, gave a lot of just like really granular insight to what is going on in the place that I was unaware of, and pretty ignorant of, even though I had spent time in some of those places multiple times.
Oh, thanks, guys. I would say it was really kind of an experiment in a way for us. Playa is there in Summer Lake, Oregon, and so it's kind of fairly central Lake County, which is nice to access more people. The county seat is down in Lakeview, which is towards the southern end of the county, and so we were excited to do something a little bit more centralized and hopefully gather more people. The practitioners, the land managers, the residents of Lake County have obviously been dealing with fire for millennia, but the increase in pace and scale of the catastrophic mega fires, and there have been multiple fires along Winter Rim, which is just above Summer Lake where Playa is located, sharing this story with a completely new crowd, a completely new audience of people that, like Michael said, they've been there, but they don't know the details as much. So it's turned out to be a really great collaboration. I'm really excited to be a part of it.
And I really appreciate, sort of the nuances and, the difference of opinion of the way people are working there. And, we're working with Autumn and a group of people who want to work together in Lake County. And it's just very fulfilling to be there and know that, we'll always make mistakes. It's never going to be perfect. But if we're working together, it feels like there's a potential that, there's a success that can happen.
Yeah, I might add on to that real quick and just say, we're really fortunate in Lake County and also Klamath County. We have a really great history of good partnership within our natural resources community. And so there's already a pretty solid foundation of trust and respect. And you're right, Nancy. Everyone comes to the table with slightly different levels of expertise in different avenues, and we all kind of contribute and take the best of what we've got and move forward. So between the Klamath Lake Forest Health Partnership, which is kind of our overarching umbrella for all the natural resources, and then the Lake County Umbrella Watershed Council, it's very geared towards holistic collaboration. There's never going to be a silver bullet, but we're so open to every possible prescription or solution, and we change as we learn new information.
One of the things that I think we artists talked about when we were at the residency and also later on when we were working on individual projects was how amazing it was to be with all these different people and learning all these different things and then feeling kind of intimidated because we only had, what was it, Michael, 8 months to make a piece. And how can you honor, sort of the shared experiences with the community and create something in that short period of time?
Yeah, that was super fulfilling to come back after, that 8 months and see what you all had done. It was just so cool because, a lot of times when we're working on, dry forest type restoration or post-fire recovery or, all these things, it can get very technical and it can get kind of bogged down with process and, grant writing and, but really it was so refreshing, honestly.
Well, for me, at first, my initial thought was I was just going to cover fire, and because that's what I was interested in, trees and what happens there. But by going to different parts of the area, both to Lake Abert and then up into the forest, and speaking to different people, I realized that I wanted this piece to be, even within all these catastrophic things that had happened with the fires and the water and with the fire had affected the watershed, that I really thought about this idea of perseverance, because I got that a lot from especially the ranchers, talking about you just get up the next day and move on. But also, thinking about this idea of these trees are burned, some trees are cut to build fire breaks. But if you look at the ground, you'll see baby ponderosa pine seedlings coming up. And that is how nature works. It regenerates itself. And so I wanted to make a piece that sort of touched on what was there, the animals, the sounds of the water, and the cut trees by the roadside where they had to clear for the fire breaks. And then basically feature the baby ponderosa seedlings, which are really tiny, but feature them as sort of the centerpiece of my work to show that, it's evolving and there's trees coming back.
Yeah, the notion of resiliency is something that kept on coming up over and over again, both people and landscape and critters and everything about the place. Just this idea of resiliency came up, but also fragility and how do those things coexist? Landscapes are going to be resilient, but are there places and in areas where humans can foster resiliency? Or is that just hubris? Like, that's the question that I really am still kind of asking myself about quite a bit. But then I also think, we're also responsible for the fragility. So maybe there is something that there's more that we can do to yeah, to make the places we live more resilient. Similar to some of the other projects Nancy's on, they're it's pretty long term. And so the thing that I did immediately was just create some drawings, which is kind of my normal creative practice. But then, this idea of, well, how can people perhaps start to create or foster resiliency in a place that's fairly isolated? Like, that's another thing that really stuck out to me is that, like Autumn mentioned, like the reforestation practices and things like that. But then the thing that struck me is how little resources there are, and that we are running out of trees or have run out of trees, and we're really just very short on that end of that process because these mega fires have burned so much acreage.
So if I may, I have had about 1 million different thoughts while you both were talking, but I guess one of the things that I want to touch on that, you both kind of talked about was the resiliency and, I want to make sure that everyone is aware of the fact that we all know that fire is a natural ecological process. And so when we talk about these catastrophic mega fires, we're not saying that we don't want any fire. The reason we're in the situation that we are in is because of our lack of management up to this point. So we have, for a variety of reasons, suppressed fire for over 150 years. The Smokey the Bear campaign was one of the most successful campaigns in that, put your fires out, which in theory is good, but we kind of went overboard. The pendulum swung a little bit too far. And so we didn't allow for any, even natural lightning caused strikes to burn. We like immediately put every fire out. And so we've taken that ecological process off of the landscape, which has in turn created a ton more fuel, stand densities that are too high, which that, has the trees basically weakening because they're competing for resources. They now are at risk for more disease and insects. That's why this education and this outreach is so important, because we are responsible for helping maintain or create a functional forest that is healthy and resistant, that mitigates the threat of these high severity wildfires, maintains the fish and wildlife habitat, the water quality, the surrounding human communities. But we want to maintain this with fire as an ecological process, which sometimes strikes people as a little bit weird. Here we are talking about how bad fire is. We do need fire, but that fire needs to be controlled, low severity, mosaic, and so if you have a stand that has been either thinned, logged, burned, etc., managed, it will respond to fire better. It better meaning like not as catastrophic. The Bratton fire, the Watson fire, the Bootleg fire, the Withers fire, all those fires that we were, around up there, those were, hundreds of thousands of acres with burn severities that were off the charts, sterilizing the soil. I mean, that's just not the type of fire that we want. So I guess that's like my recurring message, is that we're not trying to eliminate fire. We're trying to manage fire, manage the forest so it can receive good, healthy fire, because this is going to take hundreds of years. And some of these places will never return to the forest that we knew, which is okay. Not everything is static, but it just needs help. And so I love that you guys both really touched on that in your art.
They always, as an artist, when I'm applying for things, you'll have these things like place-based art, and other sort of language about a place. The people that I met are place-based. I'm not place-based. I don't live there. And so I got to see that place through their eyes. That's the beauty of art, is the ability to show someone or tell someone a story about a place they've never been. And I'm deeply honored to have Michael and the other artists with me as we traverse this, and then Autumn and the groups of people that we met at the Playa to lead us by the hand and take us on a journey through their experience.
With all of the fires that have been happening across the entire state, the Labor Day fires of 2020 were devastating, but they were also, the silver lining of that was the awareness that it brought to the rule makers. It was just so obvious that, something has to be done. So because of that, there's been a lot more funding sources available. It's become a priority for the governor and her wildfire council and things like that. And I think, just like anything, it starts to fade. Those fires were 5 years ago now. I will be working on post-fire recovery for the rest of my career in Lake County for sure. That's a long-term, long game effort. I also really want to try and focus on the healthy, or the green, I should say. Not necessarily healthy, but really getting into those priority areas that require some management, some pre-commercial thinning, kind of trying to abate the juniper encroachment. Again, juniper is a native to Oregon, but it's not supposed to be in the density and the elevation that it is. Why? Because we haven't had any fires. If we had been maintained the cultural burning from the Native Americans and let the natural lightning strikes, take place, juniper would still be at those higher elevations in the rocky areas, not marching down into the agricultural fields. Getting ahead of the game, being proactive is really, really the best case scenario for us.
And for me, the sort of optimistic side is that these young people are collaborating in ways I don't think that they did before. And I think as these fires seem to be so much more extreme, it seems like the passion's even greater. Artwork can be just entertainment, it can be beautiful, but even in that, it can also inform.
Yeah, I would totally, yeah, everything Nancy just said was fantastic. And, but again, going back to this notion of like, I think a lot of us that spent time there were making work that asks questions. Why do you think this is? And why does this happen this way? And why does this landscape look the way it does? Which is an important part of the way I think about landscape when I'm making my work. You may be looking at a landscape and, oh, it's lush and green and beautiful. And so it may be your kind of aesthetic sensibilities are like, oh, I really love the colors and textures that I'm seeing. But as soon as you start to realize, well, the understory here is full of dry tinder, and this is a big red flag danger area. Like, I know for me, over the course of the last 2 years, just the way that I start to look at forests as I'm driving throughout the state has really changed in parts that are, I'll just notice, well, like, wow, there's a lot of dry fuel on this forest floor. It probably needs a prescribed burn here one of these days pretty soon if it's going to stay that way, and the upper canopy is going to stay green for a while. So that zone in the middle where questions are being asked and people really engage with the complexity of the situations is where a lot of the artists, including Nancy and myself, really found ourselves. And it was a really rich experience.
I just have to jump in on that because that is such a good explanation of the way that people see things and the different opinions of the same. Like, we could have 100 people stand in front of a forest and probably have 100 different opinions. Is it healthy? Is it beautiful? Is it in danger? Is it at a risk? What needs to happen? What doesn't need to happen? And so that's also part of the outreach that we're trying to impact, is how to read a landscape, what is good and what is bad, or healthy or unhealthy, I guess is a better way to say it. Because our forests across the whole state of Oregon have been modified or not due to logging or fires or lack of fires, our entire culture is used to seeing the forest the way it is right now, which is not the way it should look. If we had not intervened, it would look very different. So now we are required to intervene to get it back to its natural regime. All of a sudden, it gets very scary to start creating solutions that we really don't understand. To me, before we go completely down that road, I just think we just need to try and make what we have better or healthier. Mother Nature is the best at what she does. And so we're not trying to reinvent the wheel, but we are trying to assist her to do her job.
Thanks for listening to TAC Makes, a podcast. You can find more episodes on YouTube, Spotify, and at theartscenter.net. That's arts with an S. Be sure to follow us on all platforms so you never miss an episode. Keep creating, keep connecting, and we'll see you next time.